Hey, are you ready to turn your podcast into an authority engine and not just more content? Well, you're in the right spot. Welcome to Influential Voices of Authority. This is the podcast for coaches, consultants, and experts who are ready to stop being the best kept secret in their niche and move to being that recognized, sought after authority. This is where it all begins. I'm your host, Erik K. Johnson, podcast talent coach and media veteran. In every episode of Influential Voices of Authority, I sit down with industry leaders and visibility experts to discover how they use their voice, their message, and their platform to build trust, grow their audience, and attract their premium clients. So if you're ready to turn your voice into your greatest asset, you're in the right spot. Welcome to Influential Voices of Authority. On this week's episode, I want to talk to you all about being the real you. Authority is built when people see you as the real you. And I had to learn this the hard way. When I started in radio, I started doing overnights. When I got my first full-time gig, I was working midnight to 6, which is tough in itself. Like you get to that 4 a.m. hour, just trying to stay awake is quite the challenge. And then at the time I was playing a lot of soft music. I was playing like Amy Grant and stuff. And you're playing that at 4 a.m. and you're just like, holy buckets, how am I going to stay awake through this? Well, so I was trying so hard to get out of overnights, move into nights, move into middays, move into afternoons, just something other than doing overnights. And so I was trying so hard, and I was imitating all of my favorites on the radio. I was imitating the morning show and such, and nothing was working. And I did overnights for 3 years. And it wasn't until my program director sat me down and told me to start being myself. She said, "When are you going to start being yourself?" So, "What do you mean? I am being myself." She said, "No, you're just trying to copy what everybody else is doing. They're already doing that and they do it much better than you. No offense, but stop being them and start being yourself." And that's what I did. I stopped trying to imitate everybody else, and I just started sharing myself and my story and my journey with all of my listeners. And that's when my radio career started to take off. That's when I finally moved into nights. That's when I moved into afternoons. That's when I got to be a program director. I got to run the radio station. I got to coach others and teach them how to do it. And I've been doing it for decades now. I've been on the radio for over 36,000 hours, and I've been teaching others how to do the same, how to take themselves from doing overnights to turn themselves into household names. I've taken guys off of classic rock stations, and I've made them top 40 superstars. I've taken them off of alternative stations, and I made them country rock stars. It's been an amazing journey, but it all starts with being real, because people don't trust perfection. People trust people who are real and authentic. And I know authenticity gets used a lot and tossed around these days, but in a world that's flooded with AI generated content. I mean, how many times have you watched YouTube and you're about 2 minutes into the video and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't real. They just took his voice and made him say stuff he would never say, right? That's people don't believe it. They automatically have their guard up with that AI generated automated garbage that's out there. All the templates, all the generic marketing, the greatest competitive advantage that you can have in the marketplace today isn't the technology, it's the authenticity, true authenticity inside yourself. Not what AI, not what Chat GPT tells you is authentic, but being the real you. And that's why I love talking with Andrea Stenberg on the show today, because she is all about being you and telling your story. In this conversation that I'm going to bring you, she talks about people want to see your face. They want to know you're a real human being. They want to hear your voice. They want to understand your persona and your personality. They want to know what it's like to work with you. They don't just want your information, they want you. And that's why podcasting is so strong, why video is so important, and why storytelling works so well. Not because you're delivering information, but because they each deliver connection. You're making connection with your audience. And it's an incredibly powerful lesson. And that's exactly why expertise alone isn't going to make you the authority in your niche. It's the connection that you make. Most experts believe that authority comes from knowing more, and that's the furthest from the truth. How many superstars have you seen in your niche that know less than you do, but they're more well known than you are? Exactly. It's not your content, it's who you're being while you're saying it. I don't want you going out there creating more content, more tips and tricks and tactics and sharing more information. I want you to let people get to know you because authority is built when people know who you are. The market is full of smart people. There's enough of them out there. But the ones that are willing to tell the stories, the ones that are willing to share their personality, the ones that are willing to be human, those are the ones that win. And that's what I want you to be, which is why today's conversation with Andrea Stenberg is so important because in a world where AI can create your content in seconds, your expertise alone is no longer enough to make you the authority in your niche. You need to lean into your authentic personality. And that's exactly what Andrea helps people do. Andrea Stenberg is a visibility strategist. She's a former journalist. She has an incredible history and past in journalism. She's the host of the Courage to Be Visible podcast, and she helps coaches and consultants and experts turn their expertise into influence through authentic storytelling, through video, and through strategic visibility, being seen in the right place at the right time with the right message. With more than 20 years experience in marketing and communications, Andrea teaches business owners how to build trust, authority, and recognition by consistently sharing their ideas and perspectives. You're going to love this conversation. I hope you have something to write with to take a few notes. Enjoy my conversation with Andrea Stenberg. Andrea, it is great to see you. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for inviting me, Erik.
Absolutely. When I talk with a lot of coaches, one of the biggest questions that I get is should I be on audio or should I be on video? And I usually tell them both because to me, audio and video serve two completely different purposes. But in your mind's eye, what's the single biggest benefit of being on video?
Well, I think the biggest thing with being on video, especially for coaches and any kind of expert where you're selling sort of what's in between your ears, is if people can actually like virtually look you in the eye, see your face, get a taste of your personality and your style. Like, are you kind of buttoned down and look corporate? Are you kind of goofy and wild? Like people get a taste of what it might be like to work with you. And also, like I really think I'm seeing when I'm on social media, there's so many posts where I can look at and go, that was AI, that was AI. But if you can get on camera, and I mean, there are AI avatars, but you can tell when it's not the real person speaking. So people know it's really you, and they could just kind of, in this point in time, it ramps up the trust and the authority because people know it's you. It's not a robot. It's not your assistant. It's you on camera speaking.
Yeah, AI has creeped in so much. I listen to a lot of Dan Kennedy stuff. And Dan, if you've listened to Dan for any length of time, he's got a very deliberate delivery. His personality comes in. You can tell where he's pausing for response or effect or laughter. And I can tell when it's done by AI because it sounds like Dan Kennedy, but the nuance and the pattern isn't there.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it kind of just levels things out and makes everything the same. And I'm not saying that don't ever use AI. I use AI a lot, but I don't use it to like I use my own brain and share my message. I use AI like a really cheap assistant. So, I might get it to correct my spelling or cut out my redundancy. I can be very verbose when I'm writing, and I'll say something four different ways, and I'll say, AI will go, "Well, you've said the same thing three times. Like, can you?"
Yeah.
So I use it that way. But I think like a lot of people just go, "Write me an email newsletter to promote this thing," and that's the only instruction they give, and then they just plunk it in as is, and that's not your expertise. That's not you. That's not your personality. And I think people are craving real human beings now. And if you're selling your expertise, people need to see you.
That's a great point. I've seen most successful content creators use AI to make themselves better, to make their content tighter and more efficient, rather than using AI to actually create the content. Because AI can only create it in so many ways. And if you're using AI to create the content, you start getting the same content everybody else is getting, which is, I've had AI like, hey, write a draft of this. And then I go look at it and I go, I've heard three other people say something very, very similar. So it's not helping you be your unique self. You have a great show with Courage to Be Visible, the Courage to Be Visible podcast. How do you use that to grow your authority in your space?
Well, I mean, one of the things is like you're doing here. I have guests on, so I can bring in people who have expertise that's different from mine, and just by rubbing shoulders with them, it gives me, an elevated authority. I'm seen as somebody who's sharing expertise of a wide variety of people. I'm not just making stuff up myself. And that's helpful. And I find also like when I meet somebody new, like if I'm at a networking event or we connect on social media or something, it's another way for people to see who I am and what I'm about, where I'm not saying buy my thing. Like this is just I've got this resource. Would if you're interested, take a look. So it's a nice, gentle call to action without getting to that sales conversation too soon.
It's a way to build those relationships and also to borrow trust from authorities that already exist in the space.
Exactly. And like nobody can know everything. And I think people who are willing to say, like, I don't know everything, but here's somebody else who knows about this thing that I don't know. Like I trust people who say, I don't know this, but talk to this other person. So that's one of my strategies is like let's borrow this expertise from other people and share it.
Yeah, when you can get in front of the right audience at the right time with the right message, it's so powerful. And when you can find others who already have the attention of the people you're trying to reach, it makes logical sense to partner with them. Let's go back
Exactly.
to the beginning of your show. Tell me what it was like. We all go through that imposter syndrome and we all have those butterflies in our stomach. What was it like for you the first day you launched your show?
Well, I mean, I have kind of an advantage in I've been sort of doing this forever. Before I started my business, I was a freelance journalist. And one of the things I did was I worked for an Italian Canadian newspaper, and my job was to interview entrepreneurs and try to make them look good in the paper. So it was kind of like a homecoming for me. But even going back further than that, what was really funny is when I was first thinking about doing the podcast, my mom sent me the last box of my stuff that she'd been carrying around with her all these decades. And she says, take it or I'm throwing it out. So, all right, I'll take it. I was going through and I came across a cassette tape that was labeled the Andrea Stenberg Show, and then it brought back this flood of memories when we were kids. My younger sister and I had a radio show where we had the tape recorder, with the where you push the play and
Yeah,
record, and had the little
absolutely.
and I was the host because I was the older sister, and my sister was the guest. So I feel like I'm like come full circle, and I'm doing what I was doing when I was 9.
I've done many of those myself. I don't think I have any of the tapes though. I think my mom
Well,
probably threw them out when I moved out.
Well, tragically, when I went to, because I go, oh my God, I got to hear this, and then I'd actually taped over it with, when when we were teenagers, and you tape music from the radio because,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's what. So I don't actually have the recording, but
Those are great. You have an amazing background as a journalist and a magazine editor. Over the span of your career, what have you seen as the biggest challenge for yourself when it comes to building authority in your niche?
I think it's kind of the same that everybody like. I have imposter syndrome too, and like there was one thing, like, my husband and I years ago had a computer store, and in my LinkedIn profile, I have somewhere some line about we generated $1 million of sales in the first year, and somebody that I connected with saw that, like, oh my God, you did that, and I said I did. And I went back, oh yeah, because I discounted it because I did it. Like if somebody
Yeah.
else did it, I would be impressed, but because I did it. So I do think there is the imposter syndrome that I second guess things, or even just I have a business accountability partner. We talk on the phone virtually every day and have for 15 years, and she didn't know I had a history of as a journalist. I never told anybody. She goes, "How did I not know this?" And I said, "I don't know. I was done with it." So I think, like a lot of people, the things that I'm good at, I discount because it's easy, and I think everybody can do it. And then I had to take somebody else to go, "Oh my God, you did that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did. What, you can't do that?"
I did that the other day. I went back and added up. I started in radio in 1989, and how many hours of radio have I done since 1989? And it was over 36,000 hours I've been on the radio. And it was like, holy cow, like we forget what we've done. It's so easy to forget what it was like to not know what we know because we've been doing it so long and we think, well, everybody knows how to do that. Everybody knows how to get on a mic and get in front of an audience and give a presentation, and we forget what it was like to not know when we didn't know.
And I think that's why it doesn't matter how talented you are or how successful you are, the really successful people work with coaches because, like, I have one coach of mine who says, you can't read the label when you're inside the jar. And I think that's universal to just about everybody. It takes somebody outside your business who's not in the day-to-day muck and the day-to-day work to go, wait a sec, this is really exciting, or this is really interesting, or you're really good at this. Like you really need, that's why even successful coaches work with coaches because you need an outside pair of eyes to remind you that, yeah, you don't suck.
Oh yeah, that is right. So you've been helping entrepreneurs for over 15 years now. And you create great content. You know, you did it as a journalist with the magazine, now with the podcast and your videos. Tell me about a time when your show created a big opportunity for you, or maybe opened a door to somebody. What is your show made possible for you?
Well, I mean, it does give me the opportunity to just speak to people that I wouldn't have spoken to otherwise because if you just go up to somebody, hey, can I pick your brain? Can I find out what they're like? Well, yeah, you can pay me. But, so she's not been on the guest on the podcast yet, but I had a conversation with Sue B. Zimmerman. I don't know if you know, she's a massive Instagram expert. I've taken courses from her. I've been following for ages. And I got an email saying, I'd like to be on your show. And so we got on Zoom and had a conversation. And we had this really great conversation as equals. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, it's Sue, it's Sue. So really opportunity to step up and talk to people as a peer, even though there's a part of you going, "Oh my God, this is the expert."
That's why Jamie Masters launched The Eventual Millionaire. She wanted to be a millionaire, but she was having a tough time picking the brains of millionaires. So she launched the podcast to interview millionaires on how they became a millionaire. And now she gets to have hour-long conversations every week with millionaires. And it's been what a great strategy to build relationships with not only your peers and your partners, but your mentors. It's a great way to be able to have that conversation.
And and then it also then, like we were talking about earlier, about rubbing off the authority, because I was at a network meeting and I mentioned that I'm having Sue on this podcast, and a colleague of mine was like, oh, you got her. So it's kind of win-win. Plus, like when you talk to people who know things, you learn stuff, you get interesting stories. It's just lovely.
I often tell people, your audience doesn't want to be informed, they want to be entertained. The information, what they're learning is just kind of a byproduct of why they're there. You don't read a magazine just because you want to learn. You want to be entertained. You don't listen to a show be simply because you want to learn. You want to be entertained. It's like when you're in high school and you're going into math class, there you're just learning and you're dying of boredom. But when you're in history class and you're hearing the stories come to life in the theater of the mind, then you're entertained while you're learning. In your experience in history with journalism and with your shows now, tell me about the importance of storytelling.
Well, I think you're right. Like, well, just the sake of learning, it's boring. And actually, so I would have thought from my experience, but when I heard an interview with Alan Alda a few years ago, and this has kind of shaped my perspective in a bunch of different things. And he had just written a book about growing up in a family with mental illness. And the interviewer said to him, "Wow, this was a really personal story." And Alan Alda said, "Well, of course it had to be. Otherwise, it would read like a textbook, and nobody would want to read it. They'd fall asleep." He said, so I shared personal stories to illustrate what it was like." And then the other thing he said that I also always gravitate to is he said, "I didn't tell everything because some of the story was private." And that to me was always like the aha. Like, you have to share personal stories in your marketing, in your podcast, in your blogs, in your emails, so that, because otherwise people could go and ask AI that. But when you tell the stories, people are interested, they remember it. But you also have to find that line between what's personal that you can share publicly and what's personal and private that you're going to keep to yourself.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people mistake personal for being private. You don't have to share private, but you do need to share personal and make it about yourself.
And I remember when social media first started becoming like a really big thing, and we all heard all these horror stories of young people sharing way too much and getting into trouble over it. The most graphic one was there was some woman who was on Twitter and she's like, "Oh, I'm in this boring meeting and I'm having a miscarriage and it saved me from having an abortion," and it went viral, like news, and like it just went crazy. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like people I work with, are so terrified of having that moment that they don't share anything personal. Like in my experience, in my world, coaches, experts, consultants are so afraid to share anything personal because they don't want to go that far that they never share anything. And so, like, kind of a lot of what I do is kind of, okay, let's figure out the personal things that you can talk about that aren't going to be a problem. Like, talk about your pets, talk about, where you went on holiday. Don't you necessarily talk about while you're there because then people know you're not at home, but, talk about some of the things that if you were at a Chamber of Commerce event, you don't just talk about your business, you talk about other things. What are those things that you would talk about? But you don't necessarily talk about, you know, your your crazy uncle who got arrested, or like if you've got some kind of embarrassing disease. You don't necessarily talk about those things, but there are things that you can talk about and share the things that you're passionate about. The biggest, one of my things is like, is there something you talk about that you light up, and talk about that? So I'm a big Toronto Blue Jays fan. And I often do, I've got this series of stuff that in my head, I call it baseball as a metaphor for business. And I'll tell a baseball story and then turn it into a business story as well, because I love baseball. I could talk about baseball. My husband's eyes glazes over when I talk about baseball, so I can talk about it with other people.
Well, I think of Russell Brunson in the way that he shares his personal stories about growing up and creating the potato gun or collecting the direct mail pieces, or how he loves wrestling and he wrestled in college, and how his wife was supporting him as he wrestled through college, and his Mormon faith and those sorts of personal things, but not necessarily private. He's not sharing his address, telling you what neighborhood he lives in, where he's going to be on particular days, so you could show up, which would be dangerous. But he is making that connection. So why is storytelling so important when it comes to building our authority?
Well, I mean, I think as human beings, we are wired to listen to stories, remember stories. Before we had discovered writing or invented writing, our collective memory was through storytelling. People told stories and they remembered them and they retold them. And there's a reason why there's television, and it's not just news, there's fictional television, why there's movies that aren't all documentaries, because we love a story that, that there's the emotional impact, that there's something that we can resonate with. And so when you tell a story that humanizes you, that you're not just some anonymous business on the internet, you're a person, it and it allows people to connect with you. So, for example, during the pandemic, my kid and I decided my kid needed a pet. Turns out it was actually for me, not my kid. And we're trying to figure out what to get. My husband's like, no cats. I don't want any cats anymore. And so, long story short, we got pet rats. And a business colleague of mine says, Andrea, do not talk about the rats online. People will think you're weird. And I always teach my clients like the things that make you weird, that's what's going to attract people. So I immediately went on, I had like a rat sitting on my shoulder while I'm doing a Facebook Live and talking about things. And I only had one person go, and run away. But what the interesting happened is when I started doing that, I would get people in the comments going, "Oh, I had a guinea pig when I was a child. I had a gerbil. I used to have a tarantula." And so all these people who felt like they were the weird ones saw, well, Andrea's weird too. She'll understand. And so people who had never spoken to me before started conversations. And if you're trying to build a business, conversation is the best way to build relationships with people one on one. So sometimes just these stories that, that wasn't particularly private. Everybody, lots of people have pets. I mean, I fully acknowledge rats are weird for most people, but anybody who's loved a non-human life form is going to relate to that in some way. And it was incredible the number of people who reached out with non-dog and cat pets.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife, before we got married, would have crazy pets like that. A one-eared rabbit, or she she had a white rat for a time. Like she's got a big heart for rescues, and now we have rescue dogs. Like we met in the middle. Like I can understand the rescue part. Let's not bring in the rats. I'm good with the rescue dogs. So that's we get a lot of rescue dogs, and it connects me to a lot of people, not only dog people, but rescue people, and it's just a way to share your personal life with people and connect on a relational basis, which I love.
Yeah.
Before we get back to my conversation with Andrea, I want to point out one of the big takeaways that she's already mentioned here in this conversation. And that's a lot of experts believe that if they just create better content or share more tips or demonstrate how smart they are, that the authority will naturally follow. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. That's not what you're going to do. The marketplace is full of smart people. Your audience isn't looking for more information. They're not looking for your 6 steps to success. They're looking for someone they can trust. They're looking for someone they can get behind, who can lead them to prosperity. They're looking for someone who's true to their word and who they can believe in and trust to get them where they want to go. Not more information, not more tips and tricks and tactics. That's why Andrea's message is so incredibly important, because people want to see the real person behind the expertise. Your expertise is great, but who are you? It's not what you're saying, it's who you're being while you're saying it. They want to hear your stories. They want to understand your perspective. They want to get a feel for what it's actually like to work with you, because people don't hire the expert who knows the most. They hire the expert they feel most connected to. And that's what I want you to do, is make that connection. That this is where many podcasters, many coaches and experts miss the mark. They deliver great information, but they never create a real connection with their audience. And they come to me and they say, Erik, I'm not getting any engagement, because people don't want to engage with your podcast. They want to engage with you. The host that stays hidden behind the content instead of using their podcast to showcase their personality and their perspective and their unique authority is the podcaster that loses. And I don't want that to be you, which is exactly why I created the podcast authority audit. It's all designed to help you uncover those gaps where you're leaning too much into your information and not into your personality enough. Lean into your authority, lean into who you are. That's exactly what I help people do in the podcast authority audit. We deep dive into your podcast. We review your show, your messaging, your positioning, and the way you're building trust with your audience so we can identify the gaps that might be keeping you and keeping you from building your authority and keeping your listeners from connecting with you. But more importantly, what's keeping your listeners from becoming clients? So if you want your podcast to do more than educate, if you want it to build authority and create opportunities and magnetically attract your ideal clients, then head over to podcasttalentcoach.com/coaching and get all the details right there on my podcast authority audit. That's podcasttalentcoach.com/coaching. Now, let's get back to my conversation with Andrea Stenberg. Going back to your podcast with the Courage to Be Visible podcast, how do you use that to grow your business?
Um, my podcast is relatively new, so I don't have a massive audience yet, but I'm really using it as so whenever I have guests on, I give them swipe copy and I'll do I do clips and put them on Instagram and make them collaborators. So I get a little bit of growth that way. But I'm really using it is for nurturing my audience that I'm growing in other ways and giving them another way to, especially when it's the audio version of the podcast and they've got it on their headphones and they're out, going for a walk or doing their housework or whatever they do. It's like I'm in their ear, I'm in their head. And so it's really giving them a chance to get to know me in a different way.
Well,
And so
it's
that's what I'm really
interesting that
working on.
a lot of people come to me and they say, yeah, I can't use it to grow my business because I don't have a big audience. And it's interesting that you say, well, it's new and I don't really have a big audience, but you're landing client conversations. Was it Sue that you were telling me about a little earlier that, wow, I'm
Yeah.
having like of the guests that you've invited on your show, how many of them have asked you how big your audience is?
Not one.
Not
Not
one. And
not
yet you're
one.
having great conversations with them.
And the first 3 months of the podcast, it was me reaching out to people that I know and asking them. But I'm now starting almost every day. I'm getting an email, usually from somebody's assistant, saying, we saw your podcast. We liked this episode. This is what we can talk. My client can talk about. Would that be a good fit? So almost every day now, I'm getting people coming to me. So I'm not just going through my existing network or people I know. And it's like Sue, it was her assistant that reached out to me, not the other way around. So yeah, I'm getting people coming to me, and it's giving me an opportunity to meet new people and develop relationships. And one of the things I really believe in business is you never know who is going to be your best referral partner or your best JV partner, or even just somebody with really good advice. A number of years ago, I was on LinkedIn back when groups were still really active on LinkedIn. And literally just finished reading this one book, and there was a bunch of us having a discussion. And then somebody commented on what I said, and we had this long back and forth in the group. So I sent her an invitation to connect. And then I went, oh my God, you're the person whose book I just read that I just recommended to 3 people. And like I had this little fangirl moment. And then for years, like she was never going to be a client of mine because she was, kind of in the same industry with me, but a few steps above. But every once in a while, she would send me a client of saying, this person, I can't help them with what they need, but I think they would be good for you, just because we had a conversation. So meeting people and having conversations, you just never know where that's going to go. And that's one of the exciting things of the podcast, especially now that I'm getting people I don't know already coming on as guests.
Yeah, that's great. I love when you get referrals like that just surprise you and they're out of nowhere. What's been kind of the craziest thing that's happened along your 15-year journey here in the entrepreneur space?
Oh, I don't know, but I don't know the crazy thing, but there's been a few times, where I get out of the blue, somebody invites me to speak at a summit with some like people that I'm just like, I'm on the same stage as them. Um, craziest things. Um,
Have you
Yeah,
had
I don't.
anything like serendipitous happen? Like, man, if I had not shown up there, I would have never crossed paths with somebody.
Well, I mean, another instance, there was somebody I met in a like an online community, and every year or two, he will, out of the blue, pop into my inbox or my DMs and send me a resource that absolutely blows my mind. Like, for example, remember when The Secret first came out? I hadn't heard
Yep.
of it. And he says, here's a link. You should watch this. And it was like, I'd never heard of any of this stuff. And I was like, oh, it just blew my mind. And it was just somebody I met. He's never been a client. He's never going to be a client. Just every once in a while, he just sends me something. I thought of you and I thought this would help you. And he'll send me a book or a resource or introduce me to somebody else that somehow changes my life. It's like not, like completely overhauling it, but changes like my perspective or changes the paradigm or just was like, oh, wow. And it's just, I was never going to be a client. And if I'd been one of those transactional people and said, oh, he's not going to buy from me, I don't want to know him, I would have missed out on all these learning these new things, being introduced to new people, and just because he's an interesting person, and every once in a while he thinks of me and sends me something.
I learn our assumptions get in our way a lot because we assume, oh, they can't afford me, or they're not right for me, or they're not ready. And then all of a sudden I learn that, oh, I'm retired with a huge bankroll to fund this business or something like that. And I'm like, oh, completely mistaken because I assume rather than actual have the facts to make things work. It's been crazy as that's happened multiple times in my journey. When you
Well,
come, what? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's also like you don't know what somebody's priority is. So somebody maybe they don't have a massive income, but they're like, you know what? This is a priority. I'll forgo my vacation this year to do this thing, or I'll wait a year to buy a new car because I really want to do this thing. Like you really just, if something's a priority, people will find a way to do it. And we don't, like we can't just go and make the judgment for them. Let people be a grown up and figure out for themselves what they really want, what's a priority, and what they can afford.
Yeah, if they've now discovered that it's a true priority and they're willing to spend money, that just means you've done your job as a salesperson because sales is just making them understand why your solution is right for them and why it's right for them right now and why they should make it a priority.
And if you're a good, like honest salesperson, if it's not right for them, you'll tell them that too.
Yes. Yes. And I've had many times where I've done that. I've interviewed people and I say, here's my high-end package, but you're not ready for that yet. Here's what you need to do right now to get yourself ready. Go do these things, and then maybe 6 months from now, let's talk again and see if it makes more sense for you at that time. When you're building your authority and your influence in your space, what's your go-to tactic? What's your secret sauce?
My secret sauce is kind of a two-pronged approach, is a combination of networking and video. Um, and a lot of people make the mistake of thinking if I do video or I do social media or I do whatever else, I never have to talk to anybody. But I really think if you're doing your marketing correctly, you're going to speak to more people. And I find because I'm a one woman show. I don't have a team. I don't have a bunch of coaches working under me. It's me. So I have a limited number of people that I can work with. So I don't need to go viral. But what I like is, I'll go to a networking meeting, meet somebody who maybe is a potential client, and then it's like, oh, have you seen this video I did? That might help you about the thing we were talking about. And, or, have you seen my podcast? If you're interested, you can listen to it. And it gives people, so when I'm not there, when we're not speaking, whether it's in person on Zoom or via email, they're still hearing my voice and hearing my expertise and hearing my perspective. So it's like meet somebody, nurture them, and then keep the conversation going.
It's interesting that you say you're working alone because a lot of times we see these prolific gurus all over social media and everything, and then we find out they have, seven people just working in their content creation department, and you're doing it all on your own. What do you say to people who who tell you, "Ah, I'd love to do video, but I just don't have time."
Well, one of the things that sort of my philosophy of content creation is if you start with video as the foundation of your marketing and then use some strategy and some tools to repurpose and repackage that video, and then you can build out all of your marketing from that one video. So if you did one video a month and then repackage it and repurpose it appropriately, you can have a month worth of content with very little extra work. And more importantly, one of the marketing principles is repetition. People need to hear the same message over and over again to understand it, to remember it. So
I think that scares a lot of people. They think, "Oh, I've already said that. I don't want to say it again."
but no, I mean, you think about why do ads run over and over? It's not because people are lazy or cheap. It's because people want to hear it over and over again before they remember it and understand it. And so if you start with a video, and my strategy is let's start with one long form video, even if it's only 10 minutes. And then can you cut it up into reels and shorts? Can you turn it into an Instagram carousel or a LinkedIn carousel? Do you want to do a blog post? Because not everybody watches videos or not everybody sees all videos. The other thing that happens is, say somebody does see your video and then you do a bunch of posts of different types of content, but it's the same message. Somebody goes, "Oh, I think I heard Erik say that before," or "I've heard somebody else say what Erik just said. Oh, he must be really smart," even though it was you that said it all the other times, because people don't remember that. But if they start remembering the message, and then you kind of start staying top of mind. So people need to hear it different ways, different formats, and even the same message over and over again. And there's a reason, like, you have a favorite movie that you've watched over and over again. It's because you want it, like there's something comforting about hearing something the same.
My wife always says, "This movie again?" And I'm like, "What? It's a good movie. Leave me alone. Leave me alone." That's great. What's the best way for somebody to get started using video to market themselves?
Well, I mean, really, it's, start with your sort of what's the key thing that you say. As I said, create one long form video, one, even if it's just once a month, and then repurpose it. And I have a free resource, and it's the Effortless Scaling Video Repurposing Checklist. So I made it for me so that I could remember all the steps that I want to do after I make a video. And I thought, well, okay, I've done this. I should share this. So it's really how to take your video and what are all the other things you can do with it. So your expertise, knowledge, intellectual property can become your whole marketing system without you having to break your brain by creating 100% original content every time, and also making sure that, there's auditory people, there's visual people, all the people who learn in different ways can actually still resonate with what you have to say.
Fantastic. I'm going to put a link to that at podcasttalentcoach.com/Andrea checklist. So if you want to get Andrea's, see if I can remember the name of it, Effortless Scaling Video Repurposing Checklist. So if you want to
Absolutely.
get your hand on that, podcasttalentcoach.com/Andrea checklist, we'll put it right there. That's awesome. If you were to do this whole journey over again, go back 15 years, you're taking all of your journalistic and magazine experience, and you are ready to jump into entrepreneurism head first. What would you do differently if you did it all over again?
I would have started with video sooner, and I probably would have started my podcast sooner as well, because unless you went to school to learn how to do video, your first videos are going to be terrible. So the sooner you start getting better at it. And so I would have started video a lot sooner. I would have started my podcast sooner, like a traditional podcast rather than just one-off interviews, which I did do for a long time. I did a lot of interviews with people, but I didn't turn it into a podcast. It was just sort of people would come to my website and find it kind of thing. So those are two things I think I would have started much sooner and given myself permission to be a beginner and not try to be the expert right from day one.
That is great advice. Andrea, I appreciate you taking time with us and sharing this fantastic information with us. And not only that, in an entertaining way with some great stories. So thanks for being here. I look forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks, Erik.
Man, what a great conversation with Andrea Stenberg. I'm so glad she joined us today. You can find her, visit her website at thebabyboomerentrepreneur.com. That's thebabyboomerentrepreneur.com. That link is in the show notes if you want to get over there and check that out. And make sure you get your hands on her Effortless Scaling Video Repurposing Checklist. You can find that at podcasttalentcoach.com/Andrea Checklist. It's how you can turn one video or podcast interview or speaking appearance into a week's worth of content. This simple checklist shows you how to repurpose your expertise into social media posts, into emails, into articles, and more without starting from scratch. Again, it's all over at podcasttalentcoach.com/Andrea Checklist. And then let's deep dive into your podcast. Let's show you where your authority is leaking. Let's show you how you're unintentionally derailing yourself and what you can do to fix it so you can attract your ideal clients. We can do that at podcasttalentcoach.com/coaching, because people don't trust perfection. They trust people. And in a world flooded with AI generated content and automation and templates and generic marketing, the greatest competitive advantage you have is not your technology, it's your authenticity, it's your authority and your personality. And that's exactly why I created the Podcast Authority Audit. I'll go through your show, your content, your positioning, and show you exactly what you need to do to fix it. So if you're ready to stop being the best kept secret and you're ready to move to being that recognized, sought after authority, let's turn your voice into influence. Head over to podcasttalentcoach.com/coaching. Next week, we are going to talk with Adam Roach. He is the host of the I Love Coaching podcast. He is going to show you why your coaching business feels like it's working against you. And more importantly, he's going to show you what to do about it. That's all next week here on the show. I can't wait to see you then. Thanks for being here this week. And until then, remember to step into your authority, and we'll see you next time.